If you're into Game Boy, there's a good chance you'll like my new Neo Geo Pocket Color series too. Every Thursday I'm reviewing a new Neo Geo game. Just join the PO3 Patreon or become a channel member here on YouTube. Yanaman have a stellar record so far when it comes to Game Boy RPGs. Sadly though, this isn't Aretha, so if you're hoping for something up to the standard of that franchise, I'm afraid I'm gonna have to disappoint you. Urusei Yatsura is a long-running manga series by Rumiko Takahashi, the person responsible for the much more famous Ranma 1/2. There were a rather large handful of video games dedicated to it. The majority of them were visual novels on consoles like the Mega CD and PC Engine, and for the first 10 minutes of this one, you feel like this might also be the same thing. The intro is excellently drawn and animated in a very 80s anime style, with impressive scrolling backgrounds and big, bold characters. The title translates as something like The Search for Miss Tomobiki. It's a kind of beauty pageant event rather than a kidnapped princess one. The story is kinda whatever, but then from what I can make out, this is a very casual, laid-back series anyway, so it fits. You might dismiss this as being something inaccessible to you, but if you persist through the intro, there is actually a game in there. That's where it starts to fall down, however. You immediately find yourself in a store where you can barely afford anything because you haven't even played the game yet. There's an incredibly weak weapon you can buy, and you have to, else you're entirely unarmed. Now you're walking around this maze that actually looks quite great. It reminds me of the graphics to Mysterium, walls drawn as pencil lines that provide only the most basic detail needed to give that 3D feel, and it's executed very smoothly. The enemies burst through the ceiling with a cool animation, and the characters are recognizable from the show. You'd expect that from a manga conversion, I suppose, but it's certainly never a given. The soundtrack, what I've heard anyway, slaps as well. Unfortunately, the actual gameplay doesn't really go very far. You're stumbling around in these mazes that, like I say, look perfectly fine, walking forwards until you get struck by a random encounter. The fights are incredibly simple. Not easy, I said simple, literally pressing fight until one of you, probably you, dies. I'd honestly just run from everything and make your way through the maze because, at least initially, it's almost impossible to actually defeat anything. The presentation is great, both visually and audibly, which makes it even more of a shame that there's very little gameplay to speak of. The maze has many flaws and actually auto-completes. You can press start to view where you've been. I just wish something actually happened in-game, or better yet, I wish they'd just carried on with the visual novel style of the introduction. At least that would have been mildly interesting.